The rain kept falling in a soft, steady drizzle, the kind that made the whole world look washed out and softened at the edges. The pavement outside the little coffee shop near the bus station glimmered like liquid silver. Each passing car left a trail of ripples in a puddle that stretched across the curb. The faint hum of traffic and the rhythmic tapping of raindrops created a quiet lullaby in the background, the sort of morning soundtrack only the weary and the hopeful ever truly noticed. Inside, the warmth wrapped around anyone who entered. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the buttery sweetness of pastries that had just been taken out of the oven. A soft indie melody drifted from an old speaker tucked into a corner, its sound slightly fuzzy but comforting. The shop had mismatched chairs, faded chalkboard menus, and walls cluttered with handwritten notes from regular customers. Rachel Carter stepped in, brushing droplets off her thin nursing uniform. Her blonde hair was tied back in a low ponytail, though several strands had escaped during her long night, clinging to her cheeks. A faint blush from the cold defined her pale skin, and her bright blue eyes, usually sparkling with energy, carried the exhaustion of working back-to-back overnight shifts at St. Mary's Hospital. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled her phone from her pocket to check the time. 6:12 a.m. She had just enough time to grab her coffee, walk home, and get Luke ready for school. Her life always moved in these tight increments, these delicate minutes she guarded more carefully than money. She took a few steps forward, already tasting the warmth of a dark roast on her tongue, when her gaze caught the man behind her. He stood with his shoulders slightly hunched, his eyes scanning the room with cautious alertness. His military jacket was worn and creased, the patches frayed at the edges. Dirt clung stubbornly to the seams of his boots. He carried the kind of posture that spoke of discipline, but also the kind of silence that came from battles no one else had seen. He moved like someone trying not to take up space. When the older gentleman in front of him struggled to reach for a pastry on the higher shelf, the soldier immediately stepped forward, grabbed it, and handed it to him with a polite smile. The older man nodded gratefully, muttering something soft before limping toward a table. Rachel turned back to the counter, but something made her look again. The soldier pulled his wallet from his pocket and opened it. Inside were just 3 crumpled dollar bills and a few coins, enough for one small drink at best. She wasn't sure if it was instinct, habit, or just her heart moving ahead of her brain. Kindness always seemed to find its way through her, but she leaned toward the counter and spoke softly. "One small dark roast," she said, then gestured subtly toward him. "And his coffee is on me." The barista blinked in surprise before nodding. The soldier looked up at her with disbelief etched across his features. His eyes were a stormy mix of gray and blue, a color that held both distance and depth. For a heartbeat, the world around them stopped. No rainy morning, no tired legs, no heavy air, just 2 people standing across from each other in a place where life briefly paused. "You don't have to do that," he said. His voice was rough, gravelly, like someone who hadn't used it much recently. Rachel offered a small, tired smile. "I know, but I want to." There was no dramatic flourish, no overthinking. It was simple, human, real. He swallowed hard. "I'll pay you back." She shook her head gently. "Just pass it on." He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. She gave him a brief nod, picked up her drink, and headed toward the exit, her steps light despite the fatigue pulling at her bones. The little silver bell above the door chimed softly as she disappeared into the mist. Eli, because that was his name, though she didn't know it yet, stepped up to the counter, stunned into silence. The barista handed him the warm cup. "There you go," she said softly. "Kindness like that, the world needs more of it." He stared at the cup, the heat seeping into his cold palms. For weeks, no, months, his world had been a blur of numbness, confusion, and shadows. He had walked through life as if watching himself from a distance. But this moment felt different. It was small, but it cracked something open in him. Across the city, Rachel unlocked the door to her tiny third-floor apartment, careful not to wake Luke. The hallway smelled like old carpets and burnt toast from someone's failed breakfast. Inside, the living room was cluttered with Lego pieces, papers, and a half-built robot Luke had been obsessing over. She smiled at the sight. Luke's world was brighter than hers, filled with inventions, curiosity, and the dreams of a little boy who believed superheroes were real. And in his eyes, she was one of them. She set her coffee down on the counter as Luke stumbled out, clutching his tablet. "Ra?" he asked sleepily. "I'm home," she whispered, scooping him into her arms. His voice muffled into her shoulder. "Did you get my raspberry yogurt?" Her smile faltered. "Tomorrow, I promise." Luke nodded and shuffled back to bed. She watched him go with a pang in her chest. Some nights, she wondered how long she could keep juggling everything before something broke, her schedule, her finances, or her heart. She collapsed onto the couch, exhaustion pulling her under like a wave. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Eli sat on a hotel bed that smelled of bleach and fatting memories. A flickering neon sign outside cast uneven blue light across the room. He stared at the manila envelope on the table. Adoption papers, hospital records, a birth certificate with his name but no mother listed. No family, no answers. He had spent 8 years in darkness, captured, presumed dead, surviving horrors he still couldn't name out loud. He had clawed his way back to the world, but the world didn't feel like it had a place for him anymore. Until a girl in a coffee shop had looked at him like he wasn't invisible. She didn't know him, she didn't owe him anything, and yet she had seen him, really seen him, in a way he wasn't used to. Somehow, that small moment had become the brightest thing in days that all looked the same. Night fell again, slowly, quietly. At St. Mary's Hospital, the halls echoed with the hum of old vents and the occasional beep of a distant monitor. Rachel sat at the front desk, her scrubs rumpled, her eyelids fighting gravity. She tried to focus on paperwork when the front door swung open. A man stumbled in, reeking of alcohol, his voice slurred. He leaned heavily over the counter and grinned lazily at her. "Hey, pretty girl," he slurred, "you got a phone?" Rachel stiffened. Encounters like this were not new, but they were never pleasant. She stood to her full height, though her heart fluttered nervously. "Sir, you need to take a seat, if you need medical help." He slammed his hand on the desk, making her jump. "I just asked if you have a phone." Rachel backed away slightly. "Please step back." He chuckled low and unsettling. "Relax, sweetheart." Before he could finish the sentence, before he could lean closer, the hospital door opened again. Heavy boots stepped inside. The air shifted. The drunk man turned, then stumbled back. Eli stood there, soaked from the rain, chest rising and falling with steady control. His jaw tightened as he took in the scene. Rachel's widened eyes, the man leaning over her, the tension thick enough to choke on. Eli stepped forward. Not aggressively, not recklessly, just with a silent, unmistakable presence that filled the room. "You," the drunk man muttered, "what are you staring at?" Eli didn't blink. "She asked you to step back." Something in Eli's voice, calm, firm, unshakable, cut through the haze in the man's mind. The drunk man grumbled, turned away, and crashed onto a waiting room bench, snoring within seconds. Rachel exhaled shakily, gripping the edge of the desk. Eli walked closer, slow, gentle, so he didn't startle her. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded. How did you?" "I was just passing by," he said softly. "Saw you through the window." Their eyes met again for the second time that day, and something warm flickered between them. Something unspoken, something undeniable. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "You didn't have to step in." He shook his head slightly. "You didn't have to buy me coffee." Her breath caught. He remembered he had come back. He had chosen to come back. For a moment, the hospital's fluorescent lights felt like moonlight. The world outside felt quiet, the kind of quiet that asked people to come closer. She offered a small smile. "Thank you." "Any time," he replied. And he meant it. Neither of them knew it yet, but that rainy morning gesture, that $5 cup of coffee, had just changed the course of both their lives. "Maybe I can call my heart, 'cause it just stopped when I saw you," the man slurred, leaning closer, his breath carrying the sharp tang of alcohol. Rachel forced a polite smile, heart hammering. "Sir, this is a hospital. Do you need medical attention?" Her voice was steady but firm, a line drawn with invisible chalk. "Only thing I need is your number, sweetheart," he said, voice low and greasy, a laugh caught halfway between arrogance and desperation. Rachel took a step back, gripping the edge of the counter. "I'm going to call security if you don't leave." His hand shot out, brushing her wrist. A spark of panic surged through her, rapid and primal. But then, like a quiet storm breaking, a voice cut through the haze. "Let her go." Rachel's eyes darted toward the entrance. There, standing in half-shadow, was Eli, same worn army jacket, same weight of unseen battles etched in his posture. He crossed the room in 3 calm, measured steps. His presence was not aggressive. It was simply undeniable. The drunk man turned toward him, confusion knitting his brow. Eli didn't raise a fist. He didn't need to. His gaze, quiet but unyielding, made the man stagger backward, muttering nonsense, finally turning and stumbling out into the rain-slick streets. Rachel's knees weakened slightly. "Are you okay?" Eli's voice was gentle, steady, like a bridge between chaos and calm. She nodded, still stunned. What are you doing here?" "I had a VA appointment," he said lightly. "Missed it, wandered in here, heard yelling." Rachel exhaled shakily. "Thank you." Eli shrugged. "You bought me coffee, I owed you." Later that night, they found themselves outside the hospital on a cold metal bench beneath a flickering street lamp. Rachel had brought 2 vending machine sodas, and for a while, silence settled comfortably between them, a rare gift. "You didn't have to step in like that," she said finally. "You look tired," Eli replied, "and scared." She chuckled dry, almost bitter. "That obvious." "Only to someone who knows the look," he murmured. Rachel took a slow sip of her soda. "My dad, he was in the military, deployed twice, didn't come back the second time," she swallowed. "I was 10, he was my hero. I thought if I held my breath long enough, he'd walk through the door." Eli stayed quiet, his face unreadable, but his hands clenched lightly in his lap. "What was his name?" he finally asked. "Michael Carter. He wrote letters every week. Said the hardest part wasn't the danger, it was missing birthdays, first days of school." Her eyes softened at the memory. Eli nodded slowly. "You served too, didn't you?" Rachel's gaze lingered. "No, but you did." His voice came hoarse, broken. 8 years, lost track of how many places, how many people. Her lips pressed together. "Is that why you're here alone?" "I'm not good at being around people," he admitted. "I keep waiting for the floor to drop out beneath me." "Well," Rachel said softly, her eyes glimmering, "it hasn't, not tonight." He looked at her, really looked. There was something in her expression, something unguarded and patient, and for the first time in years he felt his chest unclench. "For what it's worth," she continued, "I think my dad would have liked you." Eli blinked quickly, turning his face away, brushing a single tear from his cheek. That night 2 people, each carrying invisible scars, shared more than a bench, more than soda. They shared understanding, a fragile, whispered kind of trust. For Eli, whose world had been a blur of shadows, Rachel's quiet voice and steady presence felt like warmth returning after a long, bitter winter. Days passed. Rachel stood at the stove, stirring a pot of noodles as steam curled and mingled with the aroma of garlic and herbs. The apartment was alive with the soft glow of a flickering candle, drawings of Luke's adventures taped to the walls, alongside Rachel's nursing diagrams. The space was small, cozy, a perfect world of miniature chaos. "Smells amazing," Eli said from the doorway, rubbing his hands together. He had hesitated before coming, unsure if he belonged anywhere outside the hospital, yet Rachel's voice on the phone had made it feel natural. Safe. Rachel turned with a small smile. It's just spaghetti, nothing fancy. After weeks of gas station snacks, Eli admitted, this might be the best meal I've ever had. Luke came running into the kitchen, a toy robot in hand. Eli, you came, he exclaimed. Eli bent down, smiling, warmth radiating. I wouldn't miss it, buddy. You can sit next to me. Luke grabbed his arm, guiding him like an old friend. Rachel watched quietly, her heart warming at how effortlessly he fit into their little world. The clink of forks and the quiet hum of conversation filled the room. Eli ate slowly, savoring each bite, each flavor. More than the food, he savored the rhythm of belonging, the laughter of Luke, Rachel's approving nods, the small, ordinary miracles of home. I fixed the light switch, Rachel said, nodding toward the hallway, kept sparking. I can take a look later, Eli offered. You know wiring? She asked, impressed. 8 years in the Marines, he said simply. You learn to fix what breaks. True to his word, he knelt by the switch, tightening wires and adjusting carefully. When Rachel watched, she said nothing, simply smiled. You didn't have to do that, she murmured. I wanted to, Eli said. Later, while Rachel washed the dishes, Eli noticed Luke's jacket by the door, torn at the seam, dusty. He rinsed it carefully, stitched it with precision. When Rachel saw him holding it, she froze. You fixed his coat? She asked softly. Eli nodded. It looked cold. Rachel's gaze lingered. You're kind. He looked down. I'm not used to anyone thinking that. Well, she said, maybe you should be. Luke burst in, holding up a crayon drawing. I made this for you, Eli. The picture showed the three of them under a big blue sky. Dinner friends forever, it read in childlike scrawl. Eli's hand shook slightly as he took it. Thanks, Luke. I'm going to keep this, he said quietly. That night when Eli left, Rachel stood at the door. Thank you for coming, she whispered. He paused, a small smile tugging at his lips. Thank you for dinner, for letting me just be. You don't have to be anything here, Rachel said softly. Just be. He reached into his coat, pulling out a small wooden bead on a string. From my first tour, he said. Kept it for luck. You and Luke should have it now. Rachel took it, turning it over in her palm. We'll keep it safe. As Eli disappeared into the night, she felt a quiet certainty. He wasn't just passing through. He had touched their little world with the simplest, most profound gestures, genuine care, unspoken trust, and an open heart. That same night, Eli sat on the edge of his motel bed, staring at a letter in his hand, the seal already broken. The paper trembled slightly as he read. Mr. Eli Monroe, we write on behalf of our client, Miss Margot Welling. Our client, currently under palliative care, has recently identified you as her biological son based on a confidential adoption, tracing investigation and confirmed DNA match. She expresses a final wish to speak with you. The name Welling struck him like a ghost from another world, a world of skyscrapers and glass towers he had never known. And now, someone claiming to be his mother wanted to see him. After decades of war, absence, and rebuilding from rubble, Eli folded the letter carefully and stared at the ceiling, silent. The next morning, he found himself outside Rachel's apartment again. Eli, what are you doing here? She asked, surprised. I need to talk, he said quietly. Within minutes, they were at the small kitchen table, mugs of tea between them. He slid the envelope across the table. Rachel opened it carefully. Her eyes scanned the paper, brows furrowing. Margot Welling, she's that Welling. Eli nodded. One of the richest women in the country, an energy giant, and she's your mother. Rachel's hand went to her mouth. So, the letter says. Apparently I was adopted. My parents never told me, and now this woman says she wants to meet me. Rachel leaned forward, voice gentle. Do you want to? Eli hesitated. I don't know, it doesn't make sense if she really cared. Why now? Why not when I was a scared kid being moved from base to base? Why not when I came home broken?" His voice cracked slightly. Rachel reached out, brushing her fingers over his knuckles. "You don't have to forgive her, but maybe you deserve the truth. Closure. Not for her, for you." Eli stared at her hand. Warm, steady. "I'm afraid of what? That if I go, I'll get angry, or worse, I won't feel anything. What kind of son feels nothing when meeting the woman who gave him away?" Rachel pulled back slightly, looking him in the eyes. "The kind who survived. You are not defined by what they did or didn't do for you, but you do deserve to stop wondering, even if it's just once." Eli exhaled slowly, the weight in his chest shifting slightly. "I think I need a few days." Rachel nodded. "Take them. Whatever you decide, I'll be here." He stood in the doorway, lingering. "Thanks, Rachel, for always seeing me." She smiled softly. "Just don't vanish without saying goodbye." But that was exactly what he did. For days, Rachel heard nothing. No calls, no texts. She went to the coffee shop, waited at the bus stop, walked past the hospital bench where he often sat, but he was gone. One morning, she found a note slipped under her door in the familiar handwriting she had come to recognize. "Rachel, I needed to go. You were right. I deserve to know. But I didn't want you to see me if I broke. I'll come back if I still know how." Rachel held the note against her chest, heart heavy but proud. Eli wasn't running away. He was walking into something painful, maybe for the first time on his own terms. Whatever lay on the other side of that truth, he'd face it, and if he returned, she'd be waiting. The smell of grilled cheese filled the kitchen as Rachel sliced apples for Luke's plate. The little boy sat humming at the table, scribbling lines of code in his notebook. Rachel's mind, however, wandered to Eli and the days since he disappeared. Then Luke's voice broke through. "Rachel, look." The television in the corner blared the breaking news. Welling Energy, one of the nation's leading renewable energy conglomerates, has officially confirmed the return of a long-lost heir. Eli Monroe, former Marine presumed missing in action 8 years ago, is verified as the sole biological son of CEO Margot Welling. Photos flashed across the screen. Eli in a charcoal gray suit, standing beside a frail woman in a hospital bed, her hand resting gently over his. He looked composed, yet something flickered behind his eyes, pain, regret, and disbelief. Rachel dropped the knife onto the cutting board. Luke looked up. "That's Eli." She could not speak. Her throat had closed entirely. She felt the sting before the tears came, not just surprise but the weight of realization. He had never told her. He had just left. After tucking Luke into bed, Rachel slipped on her jacket and walked into the night. The streets were quiet, damp from an earlier drizzle. Instinct, more than memory, led her to the bench outside the hospital where Eli used to sit. It was empty, except for a folded piece of paper with her name. Hands shaking, Rachel opened it. "Rachel, I watched you carry the world on your shoulders with a grace I've never known. You gave me coffee. You gave me shelter. You gave me laughter at dinner and silence when I needed it. You gave me home, but I needed to walk into my past to see if I could live in my future. I didn't know how to explain that, so I disappeared. I am sorry. I just needed time to believe I deserved it." No signature, none was needed. Rachel sat down, holding the letter against her chest. She felt foolish, hurt, betrayed, but also something deeper. She had seen something in Eli long before the world had a headline for him. She had loved the man in a thrift store jacket, not the heir in a tailored suit. Maybe he wasn't lost. Maybe he was simply figuring out who he really was. As the wind picked up, Rachel whispered into the night, "You should have told me." Somewhere in her heart, a quiet hope remained. Maybe, just maybe, he would come back, and this time with the truth. The conference room inside Welling Energy headquarters was a cathedral of glass and light. Media crews hustled, voices blending into a rising wave of anticipation. Every major outlet was there, awaiting the return of the heir. At the front, a long table held lawyers, board members, and executives, but only one chair remained empty. Then the doors opened. Eli Monroe walked in, dressed in a simple navy suit, posture upright but not stiff, every step both a challenge and a triumph. Whispers rippled as he approached the microphone. Skipping the seat, he cleared his throat. "Good morning," Eli began, voice calm but resonant. "I know most of you are here expecting statements about fortune, succession, and what this means for Welling Energy." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd. Behind the reporters near the exit stood Rachel, pale blue blouse, jeans, hair loose, eyes locked on his. "But I'm not here to talk about fortune," he continued. "I'm here because not long ago I was just another man in a faded uniform. I had no name that mattered, no legacy I believed in, no family I knew. I was tired, angry, lost." The room hushed. "And then someone bought me a coffee." He glanced at Rachel. "She did not know my name. She did not ask. She just paid for a stranger's drink and told me to pass it on. That moment didn't just warm me, it reminded me I was still human. She saw me." The camera lights found her. She froze, eyes wide. Eli stepped down from the stage, walking toward her, past stunned executives and whispering reporters. He took a handheld mic, stopping a few feet away. "I came here today," he said softly, "because I realize this company, this money, means nothing unless I know who I am without it. Rachel reminded me I could laugh. I could fix a broken outlet and be thanked like I mattered. That maybe I did." The murmurs through the room were awe, not gossip. Rachel stepped forward, trembling. "You disappeared," she whispered. "I did," he admitted, "because I was scared. Scared that if I stayed, I'd lose you the moment you saw the truth. But the truth is, you saw me before I knew who I was." Turning to the reporters, he said, "She gave me coffee. I want to give the world better because of her." Without waiting for another question, Eli took Rachel's hand and walked out of the spotlight. Behind them, the crowd did not cheer, but the air had changed. Something real had been said, something human. 1 year later, the doors to the Carter Community Wellness Center opened with a gentle chime. The building, though modest, radiated warmth. Cream-colored walls, flower boxes. A sign reading, "In honor of James Carter." Inside, Rachel handed flyers to patients, the center funded by the Monroe Welling Foundation, offering care to veterans, low-income families, and trauma survivors. At the heart of it all stood Rachel. Eli had become a legend not for wealth but for quiet impact. He had given away most of his inherited fortune to shelters, schools, and transitional homes for veterans. He refused titles, applause, and control. "I want change," he told one journalist, and change came. On a wide plot of land beyond the town, Anchor Grove was born, a neighborhood where no veteran would sleep on the street. Open kitchens, wide porches, gardens between houses. Rachel and Luke arrived for the ribbon cutting. Eli pulled her aside toward a porch swing, suspended in the breeze. "I wanted you to see this one first," he said. "You did all this," she whispered. "No," he said, smiling, "we did." He reached into his coat pocket. Instead of a ring box, a paper cup, identical to the one from the coffee shop long ago, held a velvet pouch. Rachel laughed, tears forming. "You kept the cup." "I kept everything," he said, kneeling under the porch's shade. "You gave me coffee, you gave me peace, you gave me home." Inside the pouch, a simple gold band. "I'd like to give you forever," he said. "Yes, always, yes." From behind, Luke whispered, "You better kiss her, man." Eli scooped Rachel into his arms, kissing her as the sun dipped low behind the houses they helped build. Later, Luke uploaded a clip. A porch swing, a paper cup, a kiss, the title, "From Caffeine to Commitment." The video spread not flashy but real. One cup of coffee, one act of kindness, one home, one family rebuilt. Stories like Rachel and Eli's remind us, kindness, no matter how small, can change everything. Subscribe to Kindness and Love Tales for more heartwarming stories that restore faith in love, humanity, and hope. Hit the bell to never miss a story that could brighten your day or your life.